While Republicans and Democrats in Congress do plan to vote to reopen the government this week, the bad news is that both of the bills they're voting on are incredibly different and have little to no chance of passing both chambers. That's the key. This comes as President Trump offered up temporary protections for some young immigrants brought to this country by their parents as children in exchange for the $5.7 billion he wants for his border wall. And as CNN's Abby Phillip reports, it is designed to put pressure on Democrats.
Great day. Beautiful day.
President Trump marking Martin Luther King Day with a 2-minute visit to the Civil Rights Leaders Memorial in Washington as Democrats take aim at the president's latest proposal to end the government shutdown.
It's a non-starter because he's not addressing real border security.
Now he's really offering to go back and solve the problem that he had already created.
Trump's plan linking government funding to $5.7 billion in border security and wall funding, plus 3 years of temporary protections for Dreamers and other immigrants.
That is our plan. Border security, DACA, TPS, and many other things. Straightforward, fair, reasonable, and common sense, with lots of compromise.
His proposal now heading for a vote in the Senate tomorrow that few think will pass.
The vote this week in the Senate is not to pass the bill. It is to open up and say, can we debate this? Can we amend it? Can we make changes?
Especially since no Democrats have said they would support it.
If this is a genuine attempt, why weren't any Democrats included in the consultations for this?
Well, Margaret, we've been talking to Democrats.
Who?
Over the last 4 weeks. Well, first, the president's met repeatedly with Democrat leadership all the way through a week ago last Wednesday.
In the House, Democrats are planning to put their own proposal up for a vote this week, offering Trump an additional $1 billion in money for border security and more immigration judges, but leaving out the wall. Neither plan bringing Washington any closer to ending the month-long shutdown, as food bank and airport security lines get longer and longer, and Coast Guard service members continue to be deployed without pay. The president tweeting praise for the great patriots affected by the shutdown. But for federal workers on the verge of missing a second paycheck this year, that message is cold comfort. And adding to the ongoing stalemate, President Trump is actually now getting pressure from the right, some who say his proposal to end the shutdown is actually amnesty. Now, the president says he's saving amnesty perhaps for a bigger deal down the road, but it just goes to highlight how difficult it will be to end this shutdown. This week is likely to be a pivotal one as both sides try to put their proposals forward, neither of which are likely to go anywhere, Jim.
Yeah, we'll see if that moves the dial at all. Abby Phillip at the White House, thanks very much. Back with the panel now. So, I mean, you got these two competing plans. One that's going to come before a Democratic-controlled House, pass, and one coming before a Republican-controlled Senate, pass. But is this really a case of never the twain shall meet? I mean, what's the middle ground going to be, Janice, here that moves this forward?
I would love to see where the middle ground is. I mean, right now we have the third shutdown of this presidency and the longest in history. And, you know, it's interesting how politics keeps breaking down in interesting ways. Back in 1995, when we would have thought of seeing ourselves this day, the Republicans went into that shutdown with their numbers were down. They were being accused of being stubborn. They had not a lot to win, and Clinton could have held his own, and yet he gave them significant concessions with the balanced budget. So if you think of it, how much this president would have to win by giving some concessions in what we're talking about, the consequences at the end of the day are a lot more enormous than the issues that have brought us to this point. So you would think at some point he will look at his own numbers and say, wait a minute. Let me play the field and let me do the art of the deal the way it's supposed to be. Let's negotiate the right way, not the wrong Trump way.
MK, Vice President Pence was asked about this as he's been plugging the president's immigration plan. And on Fox News, Chris Wallace asked if the president was willing to negotiate more from this position. Have a listen to his answer.
When you say work together, does that mean that you're willing to negotiate from what the president said, or is that the final offer?
Well, of course. And the legislative process is a negotiation.
Of course, the president, do you see him willing to give more?
No, I don't think it was a bad move of him to come out and say, look, this is the thing that I am offering. I'm offering a few concessions, but his line, and look, he's gotten flack in the past, and I have given it to him for being really unclear when he's negotiating and actually being fairly bad at it. In this case, he's been very clear. The line is the physical barrier. We can talk about what it's made up of, how long it is, but the physical barrier is going to be the line. Now, he's trying to put pressure on some Republicans, obviously, but also like the Joneses and the Mansions to say, like, who tweeted a semi-approvingly, like, this is a promising step. But yeah, I don't know how they meet in the middle, because the left, understandably, is like, we gave y'all the House for a reason, right? I do think there's middle ground. There has been in the past. Democrats have voted for physical barrier. I think he's probably willing to move, but finding that physical ground and that compromise ground in this environment is extremely difficult.
So you know where the middle ground is? Yes, I see the middle ground when the government is reopened. That's all Democrats are. That's all the Democrats are asking for. So when we talk about negotiations,
all the leverage is gone.
The Democrats are just saying, why are we holding the American people hostage? If the president was truly wanting to enter into good faith negotiations, if he really wanted to talk about DACA and TPS, things he took away, mind you, and now all of a sudden he's putting them back on the table. If he really, so now he's just going to unlawfully give them back?
I just think that's
I'm just saying, if the president really wanted to negotiate, he would open up the government and then not have to have hostages.
I think this the president sees him as losing, as MK said, losing his leverage once he opens government.
But this is where they're trying to open the door. They did put temporary amnesty in the form of a 3-month reprieve for DACA on the table. Democrats say no. Oh, yeah, excuse me, 3 years. So maybe the counteroffer is permanent wall, permanent amnesty for DACA. I think that's where the deal is going. But publicly, the Democrats are not going to go there, because
the Democrats aren't going there publicly nor privately. That is not.
I think everybody knows that.
There's no way. Call DACA amnesty. That doesn't even. That's like.
But a permanent Dreamer deal would not be seen as a win.
But that's not what's being offered.
No, that's what I'm saying. But Amanda said if it was not 3 years, if it was permanent, would that be?
But let's not throw the word amnesty out there, because that's an enormous word, and that has enormous connotations.
If everyone recognized it was amnesty.
Legalization. We need, as I've said every time I'm on this show, we talk about immigration. Comprehensive immigration reform is really what's sorely needed.
That'd be nice, but short of that, would you, if you saw permanent protections for Dreamers, would you say that's a deal?
There was a deal that did have protections for Dreamers not that long ago. My mind ain't that.
I know,
my
but here we are
short.
now. Is the question.
And Donald Trump went back on that original deal that he had, and it had much more, $25 billion for the border wall. So I'm saying that to say, Donald Trump is not a good faith negotiator. Democrats have no real incentive to believe that he is going to hold his line, because the moment Ann Coulter comes out and says she don't like it, his mind changes. Open the government. This is a hostage situation.
Amen.
There you are. My bet is shutdown's not ending anytime soon, at least based on those positions.